good morning. We are now then beginning the session in the second session in the morning or in the soil cover part, and we will begin with Anwesha Mandal, who will present us the crop residue management and pathway on conservation agriculture work. Anwesha, she's a PhD student from the Department of Agricultural Extension in Mohanpur, India. Anwesha, please take your place and you can do your presentation.
Thank you, Mary. And hello, everyone. Hope you are having a good time. So I will be moving directly to the presentation. It's on crop residue management and pathway to conservation agriculture, a case study in the alluvial agro-ecosystem of West Bengal, India. So India is basically an agrarian country, and agriculture contributes largely to the India's GDP. The agriculture in India has 3 seasons, like one is Kharif season, that is the rainfed cultivation, second is the Rabi season or the winter cultivation, and the third is the Zaid season or the summer cultivation. According to the latest estimate, the total food grain production of the country is 305.44 million tons, largely contributed by rice and wheat. Then by pulses, 26 million tons, oilseeds around 37 million tons, and sugarcane almost 400 million tons. So with these huge residues come huge production, come a huge amount of residue. Mainly that is field residue, which is left over in the field after the main crop has been harvested, or the processed residue, that is the post-harvest residue. As for the latest data available, the total residue generated is estimated at 516 million tons. Now let's have a look at the distribution pattern of this residue. We will find that the cereal crops are the major contributors, followed by sugarcane, pulses, fiber crops, oilseeds, etc. And crops, we will find rice and wheat are the major sources of the residue. Now, these residues are mainly used as animal feed. Some are used as fuel substitute in the rural households. And then a portion goes into thatching and fencing. And another considerable amount goes into composting. Even after this, there is still a surplus of 100 to 150 million tons of residue per year. And from these surplus residue, and again, the major contributor is the cereal crops. So the question arises here that what happens to this surplus residue? Unfortunately, most of these residues are found in grey. Now, excuse me. According to the 2010, out of 140 million tons of the residue, 90 million tons were burned on field, and the major states were Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and West Bengal. In 2017-18, these figures stands at 116 million tons. So what happens when we burn the residues? So this is an equilibrium position when the residues are on field, that is good soil health and good environment. And when we burn a metric ton of residue, we lose important essential nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, and soil organic carbon, which deteriorates the soil health. And on the other hand, it also releases toxic gases like carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, nitrogen oxide, which degrades the environment. It so happens in 2019, the Delhi national capital had to declare an health emergency because of the air pollution caused by the residue burning. So what is the solution? Like, what could we do? The idea is to retain the crop residue in the field itself. And these crop residue in the field can do wonders, like conserving the soil and water. Crop residues is the storage of residual nutrients and thus can help in recycling the nutrients, which betters the soil fertility. It also acts as a food bank for soil macrofauna, and last but not the least, it helps in soil carbon sequestration, thus improving the environment. And the question is how do we retain the soil? So conservation agriculture is one promising way, as it aims to conserve, improve, and make efficient use of the natural resources through the management of soil, water, and biological resources with some external aid. And out of the three principles put forward by FAO, the second principle gives the scope of retention of soil residue. That is, it is the main soil crop residue is the main prerequisite for this. The present study was conducted in the alluvial zone of West Bengal to study the crop residue management. It also includes the different sources of crop residue in the locality, different crop residue management practices and their percentile status. And also it looks into the influence of socio-economic background of the farmers for the crop residue management in the practice. State of West Bengal was the place where the study was conducted. It is a promising agriculturally advanced state of the country. And the two agriculturally advanced districts are the Nadia and Hooghly, selected for the study, which also happens to fall in the alluvial zone of the state. From there, community development blocks and villages were selected. All these were done using the purposive selection method. And while selecting the respondents, there were 75 respondents who were practicing different degrees of conservation agriculture, and the method followed by non-random snowball sampling method. So when we look into the cropping pattern of the locality, we find that rice is the main crop in the Kharif season, followed by some mustard, potato, some vegetables, wheat and pulses, maize in the Rabi season. And then again in the Zaid season, it is either jute or rice. So the main crop, it is like rice-based cropping system, and the main residue generated is rice straw with some stalks of the mustard and maize and some leftovers from the vegetables. We will be concentrating on the rice crop residue, and if we see in the rice crop residue, we will find a major portion is sold out, followed by another major portion goes into cattle feed, and there is a substantial percentage of farmers who are practicing stubble burning as well. Now we studied these 12 variables, socioeconomic variables, against the mode of disposal of the crop residue, that is our dependent variable, and we found that only farm size happens to be the positively correlated with the mode of disposal of the rice residue. Among the principal component analysis we performed, there are 5 principal components we found, which causes the maximum variability in the data set, that is 68.21%. And the major variables that controls the disposal of the crop residue are cropping intensity, age of the farmers, education of the farmer, land fragmentation, livestock count, and perception on natural resource degradation. So what is our take-home message? That we should, first is that farm ecology of conservation agriculture should be dealt with family ecosystem as well. That is, the crop diversity should take care of the family nutrition and livelihood. The second one is education, that plays a key role in the changing of human behavior. This also helps to get rid of social evils like crop residue burning, thus protecting the environment, mankind, and future production. Third is the community participation and community eco-monitoring, which says that this is not an individual game, but we must play together for a successful implementation of conservation agriculture. Last but not the least, developing a strong database on the crop residue generation, processing, and marketability, so that a micro plan could be created for proper implementation of the strategies. So this was all about the presentation, and I am really thankful to my Professor Acharya, my institute Bidhan Chandra Krishi Vishwavidyalaya, my project partners NIHEP and ICR, and the whole team of World Congress, Future of Farming, for giving me this opportunity, excellent opportunity for making the presentation. So thank you all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anwesha. You finished before your time. You have already 1 minute, but thank you so much. And I hope you will be available for the discussion.
Yeah, I will be available.
Okay. And so we will proceed to the next presentation. This presentation will be performed by Gerard Rass. He's General Secretary and co-founder from the Association for Promotion for Sustainable Agriculture. APAT is the French No-Till Federation of Farm Associations. And Gerard Rass will present to us the role of farmers implementing and disseminating sustainable soil management systems, challenge and drivers view of farmers and associations. Please, Gerhard, your time now.
Dear friends, I will tell you about the role of farmers scaling up conservation agriculture. As you know, the Food System Summit of United Nations is going on. It says that healthy and resilient food systems are the foundation of sustainable development. We know that the planet has a proven food system based on conservation agriculture with more than 30 years of experience. It is sustainable and resilient. Unfortunately, only 12% of the cultivable area are under conservation agriculture. We don't need to transform everything, neither reinventing funny concepts. We need to spread no-till farming everywhere. It improves continuously. The high adoption of conservation agriculture production systems should be the concern of the Food System Summit. The cooperation between farmers' associations does accelerate scaling up of CA. I will show you how. In France, the APAD, the Farmers Association, cooperates with APAD in Tunisia. Both have the same name, the same objective. They also cooperate with AMAC, the Association of Conservation Agriculture in Morocco. 50% are farmers and 50% are scientists. The African Conservation Tillage Network connects the different associations across the continent. The common issue they have is about lack of operational and sufficient mechanization. That's why they have built a cooperative project, a framework for sustainable agriculture mechanization. Here you see in Nigeria, in Cameroon, also in Uganda, in Malawi, how sustainable mechanization systems and adapted mechanization is helping scaling up conservation agriculture. There are plenty of countries in Africa which are moving forward conservation agriculture. APRESID International, the Argentinian Farmers, No-Till Farmers Association, cooperates with Africa and African farmers in different countries like Guinea here. The work group is another Argentinian farmers group. It operates in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, in other countries. And the leader, Senor Lopez Menendez, has the vision to convert the continent into the breadbasket of the world, with technologies and with know-how of Argentinian farmers. The results are amazing. Higher yields, higher productivity, and profitability for farmers. This is the basis for sustainable development of human society in the countries. Scientists and institutions, technology companies have also a key role in supporting farmers. Here you see the cooperation between APRESID and the Institute of Research, of Agronomic Research of Guinea. Public policies are essential to enable freedom to operate and responsibility of actors. I will quote a speech of the President of Ghana, Akufo-Addo, in 2017 in a big conference about development in Africa. He said, Africa is rich enough in natural and human resources to be actor of its own development, that African people must act as entrepreneurs, stop being dependent on states and donors. And then Africa would be free and independent and progress in development. I would like European farmers, citizens, and policymakers to hear this, because in Europe, farmers get subsidies to do what you see on the left, to do tillage, conventional or organic, it's the same, it's tillage. Results are the same. 95% of annual crops in Europe under this type of system. And with the new common agricultural policies, the Green Deal, there is no support for CA, no special support for CA. And in addition, they want to ban glyphosate. It makes this just impossible. Advocacy is needed towards policymakers for this reason. Not just to get supportive policies, but at least to avoid inadequate regulations, to obtain freedom to operate in our ways, to be able to make the best possible agriculture we can, like African people and Argentinian people. This is for us as farmers, but for the people we feed every day. If farmers fail, all people starve and fail. In 2015, in the Paris Conference of Climate, 15 associations of conservation agriculture around the world and specialists and high-level scientists, they signed up a manifesto for climate to show and to explain policymakers at highest levels that conservation agriculture is a key path forward to mitigate climate change and adaptation to climate, and also for food security together at the same time. We need both. We signed up for the 4,000 international initiative as one of the first founders and members and active members. And now our network is also a member of the bureau of the 4,000 to represent the farmers. In the COP22 in Marrakesh, but also in others, which were following, we made a communication, documents of communication to explain together farmers, but also specialists and scientists, you see them here, the benefits of conservation agriculture for the world. But what's next now? How can we go from 12% of conservation agriculture in the world to 90%, which is what we need? Can we stay with that, the level we have now, or can we accelerate? All farmers can practice conservation agriculture in different conditions all around the world. Animals can be vegetables, trees too, agroforestry. We have good results, as here on the farm of our friend Aziz El Abidine in Morocco. Before you had erosion, now you've got good soil with organic matter and producing more. Everybody tells us we do well every time we explain to farmers and citizens, or to policymakers too. But at the same time, politicians, they tell us to use tillage and no herbicide. We cannot do both together. Who can imagine we can plow this green biomass? All farmers know it's impossible. The key is a dialogue with society, because policymakers decide the laws and regulations. They usually follow public opinion and influencers who don't know anything about agriculture. Farmers must also be part of influencers. Scientists are essential in the debate to give honest scientific arguments. The key issue in our modern society is that me as a farmer, for me, the most difficult part of my job is to be nice with people who pretend to know how to do my job. They know better. Herbert Bartz has told us several times, dictate your action, take your decision yourself like a free person, a free farmer. Rolf Dersch, the high-level scientist and the key developer, specialist in strategies of development, has delivered the key messages for strategy. He gives us now sometimes advices from Germany, where he's retired. First, we need to get champions farmers in each country. Good news, we have them in most countries. Don't see principles. No tillage is zero tillage. It's not min-till or anything else. Pour les Français qui traduisent, la traduction de no tillage, c'est semi-direct. Merci. We must bring the results to policymakers. So farmers are spokesmen. They have the legitimacy of producers who feed people. Experts have to support. And we must operate on a global consistent network to give the messages, consistent messages to all the decision makers at global level. Thank you to be part of this global effort to make CA community, our community, the leading movement for sustainable food production for the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerard, for your presentation, showing a good view about our farmers and our work and the work and how we can work together and do better. And continue to our programmation, we will now call to Chris Cavalaris. Chris Cavalaris is an agricultural engineer from the University of Thessaly in Greece, and he will present to us the work assessment of economic impacts on conservation agriculture and precision agriculture technologies on a winter wheat crop. Chris, please, you can take your place and do your presentation.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Cavalaris from University of Thessaly, Greece, representing also the Hellenic Association for the Promotion of Conservation Agriculture. I'm going to present you some assessments of the economic impacts of conservation and the precision agriculture technologies on a winter wheat crop. The scope of the present study was to evaluate these impacts under real farmers' conditions. In particular, we integrated gradually no-tillage, sustainable crop rotations. These comprise two of the three pillars of conservation agriculture, and variable rate fertilization. For that purpose, we found a uniform farmers' field in central Greece that was planted with winter wheat. Half of the field had maize as a previous crop, and the other half had a legume. We divided the field into 4 plots, where we established 4 treatments. First, control, including conventional plowing and maize as a previous crop. Second, no-tillage with a maize as a previous crop. Third, no-tillage with a sustainable legume rotation. And fourth, no-tillage, sustainable rotation, and also variable rate fertilization. No-tillage involved direct drilling with a Kunes D-Liner 3000 belonging to University of Thessaly. Variable rate fertilization was performed with a novel system of company Medal. During the growing period, we kept a detailed registration of all the farm inputs and imported the data into the Farm Econ platform, a tool developed by the Laboratory of Farm Mechanization of University of Thessaly for estimating open field agriculture costs. The tool estimates both variable and fixed operational costs, providing a holistic approach for an economic analysis. Fixed costs are highly dependent on the annual use of equipment. Annual use, consequently, depends on the farm size. In order to investigate this effect, 2 alternative scenarios were examined. The first accounted for the actual farm size, that was 20 hectares, a typical arable farm size in Greece. The second, an hypothetical large farm of 300 hectares, a size that approaches the annual capacity of the no-till planter. Other assumptions were winter wheat as the only crop, investment to appropriate equipment for the sustainable techniques, and shifting to smaller tractors and withdrawing all the tillage implements where no-till is performed. The final yield was measured with a combined harvest with a yield mapping system. The map was cleared from border effects and outliers before estimating average yields for each plot. Now, let's see what we found. The adoption of sustainable techniques increased gradually the crop yield. Shifting from plowing to no-till improved yield by 10.4%. Combining no-till with a legume rotation improved the yield further by 6%. And finally, the integration of variable rate fertilization provided an extra increase of 3.1%. Totally, converting from conventional to a fully sustainable system increased the yield by 29.5%. Yields may be the one side of the coin, but production costs are for sure the other one. As expected, fixed costs were extremely high for the small farm because of the limited annual use of the machinery and the equipment. Farmers usually neglect this, but if they do consider, they might change their perception for their profitability. The table presents an analytical description of all the costs. Red colors imply high costs and green colors low costs. A negative net income is actually obtained for all the treatments in the small farm and even for conventional equipment in the large farm. The last line presents the economic budget if we had accounted only for the variable costs as farmers usually do. Both farms resulted still on a negative income for conventional method. So the only way to obtain a profit in that case is through subsidies. Nevertheless, shifting from conventional to sustainable methods resulted in a decrease in total operation costs. In particular, no-tillage eliminated the variable and fixed costs of tillage by €243 per hectare in the small farm and by €192 per hectare in the large one. An extra reduction of €24 per hectare was obtained in the large farm by shifting to smaller tractors when adopting no-till. There was an increase, however, at the cost of sowing due to the investment on a no-till drill and some higher fuel consumption. This increase were at the order of €21 per hectare for the large farm and raised enormously to €74 per hectare for the small farm. We know that legume rotations are well established for their potential to improve soil fertility and reducing the needs for nitrogen fertilizers. In the present study, though, we decided to keep the nitrogen dose constant because no-till was newly introduced and we wanted to retain the carbon-nitrogen ratio. So no nitrogen savings were encountered in the legume rotation treatment. Nevertheless, variable rate fertilization reduced the total amount of nitrogen by 18%, lowering the fertilization costs despite the investments to the variable rate equipment. If we focus on the net income, we find out that no-tillage improved profitability by €251 per hectare in the small farm and by €276 per hectare in the large farm. The income for the large farm actually turns from negative to positive. The legume rotation increased further the net income by €124 per hectare in both farms. Variable rate fertilization improved profitability by a further €38 per hectare for the small farm and by €54 per hectare for the large farm. Overall, by combining the three sustainable methods, profitability was improved by €413 per hectare in the small farm and by €454 per hectare in the large farm. Considering the cost of production for 1 kilogram of grain, we recognize again a significantly higher cost for the conventional method. And if we draw a baseline at the selling price of wheat, which was €0.23 per kilogram for 2018, we realized the paradox that small-scale farmers produce our food and also pays us for that. They have no opportunities to become profitable even if they invest in novel technologies. This partially explains the low adoption rate of conservation and precision agriculture in Greece and Europe, where small farmers are the majority. On the other hand, it is possible for the large farm to become viable by shifting to more sustainable schemes. Conclusively, no-tillage was the method that boosted most the profit by improving crop yield by 10.4% and reducing production costs by 23%. The combination of no-till with a legume rotation improved the yield by a further 16%. Additional implementation of variable rate fertilization provided a further reduction of 4% in the production costs and improved yield by 3.1%. The farm size is a crucial parameter, of course, for economic viability. Intensive annual use of agricultural equipment, either on single large farms or through collaborative schemes, is essential for suppressing the fixed costs of investments and promoting sustainable practices. Thank you all for your attendance, and I will be glad to answer to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Cavalaris, for your presentation, bringing interesting information regarding economics about different sizing on farmlands, and can inspire a good discussion later. And we will proceed to the next presenter. It's Dr. Johan Labuschagne. He is an agricultural scientist and working in the Western Cape Department of Agriculture in South Africa. Dr. Johan will present us the fine-tuning nitrogen fertilizing norms for wheat under conservation agriculture in South Africa. Dr. Johan, please can do your presentation.
Good day, my name is Johan Labuschagne and I'm employed by the Western Cape Department of Agriculture in South Africa. On behalf of the research team, I would like to thank the organizing committee for allowing us to share our important research results on this platform. I'm going to follow this normal procedure of a presentation. I'm going to look at the introduction, methods, results, way forward, and also some acknowledgements. We are in South Africa, the southernmost country in Africa, and the research was done in the Western Cape, the southwestern corner of South Africa. Now, Mr. Chair, I want to ask the question, is it really necessary to revisit nitrogen guidelines? And the answer is a definite yes. When you look at the grain-producing areas of South Africa, or even the Western Cape, the face of these areas has changed quite dramatically from overworked soil to soil which is only worked to ensure proper germination of seeds, so less disturbance of the soil as possible. And the result of this is that the carbon content of the soil will increase over time, and I don't think I would really explain the importance of this. Once the carbon content increases, a lot of things changes within the soil, positive effects on yield and nitrogen mineralization, etc., etc. So we then decided to look at the calibration of wheat response curves, where wheat is grown under CA conditions in South Africa. We have challenges, however, and that is that the crop productivity in our area is changed quite a lot between areas. The blue zones there are the high production areas. So we first have the Swartland area, that is the southwestern part of the Western Cape. The blue area there, that is the high potential areas. And as we move north, the rainfall decreases and also the yield potential decreases. Then on the Southern Cape, we've got the Rans Overberg area, which is a high production area. And as we move east, the rainfall decreases and the yield potential follows. So we are in the Mediterranean area, so this whole area receives winter rainfall. No summer rainfall in the Swartland area, but some summer rainfall increases as we move towards the east. Our soils differ quite a lot. We've got very stony soils in the Swartland area. This is a typical Swartland area soil, some stones in it, and then in the Rans area or the Southern Cape, also very high soil stone content. Looking at the Darling area in the western parts, that is in the Swartland area, there's very sandy soils, and when we move, the soils also turns a little bit reddish. So quite a different range of soils that we have to deal with. So we have identified 6 where the research was done, but impossible for me to deal with all these sites at this stage. So I'm just going to look at the Riviersonder End site. That is our Tygerhoek research farm. This is an aerial picture of how the research site looked like. That was taken in 2020, last year. And as I said, I'm going to concentrate on the Riviersonder End, and I'm just going to look at the wheat after canola system. So the normal procedure is to have a control, and that is a blue area there, so no nitrogen applied at plant right through. I'm not going to look at the foliar applications for the purpose of this presentation. It's a topic on its own. And then we also have either a 0 kilogram in at plant or 25. And then top dressing, we increase our top dress rate from 0 to 165. And then the total fertilizer input will then be from 0 to 190 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. So when we look at our results last 5 years, we started in 2016. As you can see there, quite a different response in terms of years. So we have our grain yield expressed on the y-axis, and on the x-axis we've got our yield years, 2016 to 2020, as well as the nitrogen application rate. So the blue bar represents the control, and then the next one, the orange bar, 25 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, the grade 50 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, and so it increases up to 190 kilograms of N per hectare, the brown bar. We also measure rainfall. So as you can see, the rainfall differs quite dramatically between years. So this is the average rainfall. We call it in-season rainfall from April to September. That is the important months for our season. So it is quite different between years. So from that, it's very important. It's very difficult to get results from that. So what we do, we then calculate the relative yield. Relative yield is basically a yield at a specific nitrogen application rate, expressed as a percentage of the maximum yield for that specific year. And then we fit quadratic functions to that, and this is then what we end up with. It's internationally accepted to try to produce at the 90% level, more or less. So we focus then with our study to get a value at that, in that circled area there. And for Teigerhout, it would be in a vicinity of 50 to 80 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. So we've got the functions here then for the different years, 2016 to 2020. When you look at the R-squared values, it's quite nice fittings, except for 2017, that was not that good. And all p-values were significant except for 2017. So we get to the practical implications of this quadratic functions, and that is where we get to the actual recommended or the guidelines. So for 2016, as an example, with the application of 57 kilograms of nitrogen, we actually achieved, according to that quadratic function, over 4 tons per hectare, and the yield potential at the protein, at 10.9%. But it's not that simple. If you look at 2018, 2019, with 49 kilograms of nitrogen, according to that functions, we achieved 5.3 tons in 2018 with the same application rate, 2.8 tons per hectare in 2019. As expected, the protein content will differ. And so it's not, we can not only use the functions, we also have to do something else to get to a real factor, especially application rate or a recommended rate. Luckily, we have got much more information from the trials than just the functions. So we also look at nitrogen content, inorganic nitrogen content at planting. And in 2018, at planting, there was 32 milligram per kilogram inorganic nitrogen, that is ammonium and nitrate at planting. And in 2019, there was only 19. So already the difference in the starting nitrogen content of the soil at planting. We also have to look at rainfall. So if you look at 2018, the in-season rainfall, April to September, was 179. And in 2019, it was only 96 millimeter for the in-season rainfall. But also important, August, September is very important months for us here in South Africa, in the Western Cape. And we can see that 2018 was much better in terms of rainfall received over the 2 months than 2019. When I started the trial, I contacted a few advisors in the areas and ask them, what would your recommendation be for a specific, in this case, our Tegerhoek farm wheat after canola? And I took the average of the few answers that I've got, and I've got the answer, the application rate was 78 kilograms per hectare, the guideline. So when you look at the 78 year, and what we actually have at this stage is only 20 that is close to the 78. The others are way below that figure of 78. So we expect that we might be able to reduce our guidelines according to the research results that we have gathered over the past 5 years. But it's not that simple. We also want to combine our quadratic function with an index to further fine-tune our guidelines. So we would like to look at soil inorganic nitrogen, that is ammonium and nitrate, at planting as well as pre-top dress or at top dress, and maybe what is left late at the end of the season. And then what we want to do is want to see if inorganic nitrogen in the soil, the area there encircled, is there any relation between inorganic nitrogen with the relative yield, and use that also as a factor that we might use to calculate the guideline. We also want to look at the soil carbon and soil CN ratios to see if that would have an effect to fine-tune the norm. Also the rainfall, as you have seen. So the in-season, but very important, the distribution within the season. How does that influence the final fine-tuned recommendation? And then we also want to see if clay content has an effect. So quite a number of additional information which we will use as an index to combine with the quadratic functions to get to a final index for a recommendation. So, Mr. Chair, I want to acknowledge all these organizations that contributed quite generously to this project. Quite a lot of money was made available, and without these contributions, we would not be able to do a study at this nature. If you want to contact me, there's my details, johan@elsenberg.com. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Labuschagne, for your presentation, showing us results for the normalization for nitrogen fertilization in wheat in conservation agriculture in Africa. And continuing the presentations, we will now have the work engage system design of direct seedings under permanent cover crops without glyphosate. This work will be presented by Dr. Pierre Yves Bernard. He's an associate professor in agronomy at Université La Salle in the campus of Rouen in France. Please, Dr. Bernard, you can do your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I am Pierre Yves Bernard, and I am very pleased to present the French project Engage. This project focuses on co-design and test seeding system under permanent cover without glyphosate. This project started at the end of 2018 and involves various actors in research, agricultural extension services, and higher education. Okay, first a few points about the context. Engage is directly related to the specific context of the potential ban on glyphosate, the non-specific herbicide, sometimes presented as a fourth pillar of conservation agriculture. Stopping the use of glyphosate would represent a technical dead end for the cropping systems based on direct seeding under permanent cover. Indeed, the use of non-selective herbicides such as glyphosate is the most common technical lever for weed and cover crop management. It therefore becomes necessary to find alternatives for the sustainability of the systems. So the main goal of our project is to design and test direct seeding cropping system under permanent cover without glyphosate and with herbicide treatment frequency index, HTFI, less than 1. Some words about our organization. The general organization of the project is based on 4 complementary actions. First, track farmers' innovations. 2, experiment, in particular by monitoring the evolution of weed communities on a network of agricultural plots. Third, co-design innovative cropping systems thanks to workshops with farmers and extensions. And 4, of course, communicate about the project. Okay, our working approach. Our work focuses on cropping system emblematic of conservation agriculture, no-till systems with direct seeding onto a permanent cover of legume. We are here a representative type of crop rotation, rapeseed, soft winter wheat, and finally winter barley. And with, of course, a permanent cover of white clover. And glyphosate is used annually for the chemical control of weeds and white clover. What are the main features of our experiment protocol? Our study sites are located in the northwest in France, the northwest of France, in Normandy region and Pays de la Loire regions. Several modalities have been tested, use of alternatives in terms of chemical control with, for example, fluorosulam, dicamba, with doublings of the sowing density of wheat, and with and without cover termination. Observation focused on the abundance and diversity of wheat flora, the percentage of coverage, the above ground biomass produced, and the yield components. Okay, let's see some results. The progress of the project allows us today to identify the tracks exploited by the farmers and to assess their feasibility. The strategies tested in the field on agricultural plots integrate different components of the technical itinerary. The results presented here come from data collected over 2 crop years in 2019 and 2020. Concerning the result with and without glyphosate, we first see that the biomass, the clover biomass, is more important in the modalities without glyphosate. In the same way, the clover cover is more important without glyphosate. Obviously, the wheat biomass is more important in the modality with glyphosate. In terms of diversity, there is a greater richness in weed species in the glyphosate-free modalities. Regarding the impact of chemical alternatives to glyphosate, it appears that glyphosate allows better control of the clover. In addition, it should be noted that the species richness of weeds is higher without glyphosate in the case of dicamba plus cover crushing and fluoracula. Concerning the factor sowing density, wheat sowing density, the results are encouraging with yield components close to the modalities with glyphosate when increasing the sowing density of wheat. For example, here with the number of plants per square meter. And we can note also that the HTFI is lower than the glyphosate modality and very close to our goal, less than 1. Finally, before we finish, some key findings and implications. First of all, remove glyphosate from technical itinerary without any alternative isn't relevant. Secondly, dicamba and fluoracula don't allow good cover regulation and are questioned from environmental impacts. Finally, increasing the seeding rates is promising, but should be combined with other tools at the cropping system level. At the moment, for the current crop year, note that we experiment on the doses of herbicide products applied, maintain the experiment on the sowing density, test alternative methods for cover crop termination, for example, electric weeding, and finally, redesign of cover crop species and or cultivar to less aggressive ones. It's time to thank you for your attention and thank you to the organizers of 8WCCA. Goodbye.
Good afternoon. My name is Hans Henrik Pedersen. I'm project manager of the Danish Mintil Association, FRDK. I made this presentation jointly with Alexander, who was project leader of one of the projects that I'll present this afternoon. So, during the last 10 years, we've been involved in two projects, both having the aim of demonstrating and trialing carbon conservation agriculture, whether that being suitable for application in Denmark, in Northern Europe. Our first project, the Optitil project, started in 2012. That was mainly a demonstration project where we invited all suppliers of seed drills to drill in plots, both with direct drilling, but also in soils that had been previously been tilled. So we made, we had the project ran for 3 growing seasons, and the demonstration were applied on 3 fields. They were only demonstration plots, so there were no replications. I'll present only one of the yield measurements that we made on one winter barley fields, and as can be seen, results from plots that has been no tilled, drilled with no prior tilling on the green columns, and on the blue columns you see plots that have been yields from plots that have been tilled prior to drilling. We saw a lot of variability between fields and years, and also about between machines, but we didn't see any tendency neither towards better yields with tilled nor with no till machines. we were rather successful gathering people that were interesting to see about this no-till and conservation agriculture. So at one occasion, we asked all the visitors, all the farmers, to score the established wheat plots. So this was 2 months after it was a month after drilling, and what can be seen from the results that in generally the more you till, the better score the farmers gave to the plots, and the no-till plots that didn't really like them, so they have a score in the middle, and as can be seen from the scale, that means that they can do better in their own field. They don't want to see fields like that on their farm. I would argue that this is all the way. It depends on the eyes that you see. So farmers are used to seeing green plants on black soil, and that's what they like to see. So even in this plot on the left, they probably dislike, most farmers will probably dislike that straw has still been left on the surface. So this is a case of poor plowing, and most farmers will not be used to see a plot like you see on your right hand side. So it is a no-till field. You can easily see the last year's stubble, and that's in this case, in this farm, in this trial, even the direction of travel the direction of drilling has been changed from one year to the other. In my eyes, and I think also for an increasing number of farmers, they can still consider this as a very well-established wheat field with clear green rows, but and also with stubble between to protect the land and the crops against wind and wind erosion. So this photos were from the newer carbon farm projects, and that was started up after ending of the Optitil projects, and we wanted in this new project to go one step further, not only to demonstrate but also to test in large plots on farm trials with large plots. We wanted to test also statistically whether the difference between treatments. So we had the 3 known, well-known growing practices. So with mulbar plowing or with harrowing, just cultivating with non-inversion, and the last known practice number 3 with no-till or conservation agriculture. So these two trials were laid out on 2 conservation agriculture farms. So these 3 systems were all known to the farmers. We included an experimental one where we tried to optimize carbon input by, in 1 year we had companion cropping, and in all years we tried to introduce as much cover crop as we possibly can to optimize the carbon input to the soil. So for the results of this of the carbon farm trials so far, these are the results of the 3 first year, and you can see the crops that has been grown and will be grown for the next years. On one farm, on farm 1, you had the highest yield on average across 3 years in the mulbar plowed plots, and in farm 2 you got higher yields on no-till plots and on plots that have only been tilled but not plowed. So on average across farms, you see very little difference between the treatments. And the experimental one where we tried to optimize carbon input, we're not rather successful looking at yields. We did lose yields caused by weed competition and cover crops and companion crop competitions. Researchers both from Aarhus University and Copenhagen University was invited in the project. There will be there will be a publication summing up on all the results on soil and plants, including carbon change in carbon content, plant growth, and biomass production. The only results I will show here is measurements of beetles and spiders. Both they're all good predators against aphids and other insects. As can be seen, the number of beetles and spiders are between 3 and 8 times higher in plots that were not mulbore plowed. So you can achieve, as shown here, a lot of natural predators by conservation agriculture compared to a traditional plowed system. In the carbon farm projects, we have also 2 organic farmers that want to reduce their tillage intensity that has so far, as for most organic farmers, are rather high. So we are trialing on these 2 farms. Can we implement some of the carbon conservation agriculture methodologies? We trialed with cover crops, as can we see they are planted drilled here back in 2018 on the photos on the 2 farms, but have not yet found a success of establishing yearly cover crops. So what we have shifted to and will continue working on during the next years is that we have established white clover in the conservation agriculture plots, and that will be a permanent cover. And we will try to establish the cash crops with a rotary tiller, till strips to prepare seed beds in the strips with a rotary tiller, and we will also develop a rotary mower that can be used for weed control and to cut the cover crop between the rows of cash crops. To summarize up with this, I'll summarize up on this final slide. The last 9 years and our 2 projects have shown that yields from carbon conservation agriculture plots and fields are much similar to yields from fields that have been tilled. At several occasions, we have seen that no-till crops establish slower but catch up later in the season, ending up with good crops and yields. Surely many farmers are still very skeptical towards conservation agriculture, but an increasing number of farmers catch interest and they start testing no-till on a few fields or on a larger scale. It's not only due to our projects, but we believe that our demonstrations and our dissemination activities have made more farmers confident that conservation agriculture is a viable production system. It may not be due to our projects, but during the last 4 years, we have in Denmark seen a 39% increase in the area that has been established with no-till. And hereby I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cavalaris, for your answer.
Okay.
We have already some questions yet for Gerard Rass. We have one question for you. Can you hear us? Are you hearing us? Gerard? We have no one of the other participants. Rigi, from where is Rigi one of the authors or not? I cannot. Are you? Oh, that's only Ms. Cavalaris. Anwesha, unfortunately, Anwesha, sorry, there is no question for your work, although it brings interesting results for India. And we have one. Okay. Gerhard, so are you hearing us? I will do the question for you. Okay. The question is, why is France behind in the development of conservation agriculture compared to other countries in the world? What are the barriers? Please open the microphone, Gerhard.
It's not only France, I'm telling for Europe. And in fact, comparing to South America, for example, we have a lot of subsidies. The general income of farmers is exactly the amount of subsidies. It means farmers are, in exchange for subsidies, we have plenty of norms and regulations and bureaucracy. And that's why farmers are chasing the subsidies, and in exchange they do what they are told to do. And the people who are deciding are politicians and others, mainly NGOs, etc. And now the new CAP, Common Agricultural Policy, is 100% focused on environment, climate change, etc. And they just forget production. And that's what it's. This is just the key reason. It was always in the past, but now it's still worse.
Thank you so much, Gerhard, for your answer. We have here quite some questions more. Two of them are for Dr. Johan from South Africa, but he's not online. Maybe one of them I can do, and any one of you can try to answer. But there is one question more for Dr. Cavalaris that are asking where they can find more information, complete information regarding your work, what you presented here, please.
Okay, I have my email at the end of my presentations. I can send directly, and also from the proceedings of the conference, I can send some results. But they can contact me through my email, and I will give any information is required.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cavalaris. There is one question that I will read it for you all, and if one of you wants to answer it, I think it is to Dr. Johan, but she's not online. And the question is, how cover crops protect the plant from the winter, because cover crops is maintain moisture content in soil. So is anyone able to want to answer or have any suggestion about this question?
I can, may I? Okay.
Yes, please.
Yes, we know that soil temperature has lower fluctuations, daily fluctuations in conservation agriculture. So you don't go to extreme lows during the night because the residue reduce the change of the loss of temperature from the soil. This is one reason, and another reason is the crop residue reduce the wind speed at the soil surface, and also by that way they protect the soil. So we escape the extreme lows, even though it is moist. The moisture helps to avoid very low temperatures.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Cavalaris. There is just one answer more. I think it's for Dr. Bernard and Dr. Kodo, that both I think are in the room to answer. And that's a question from Susan asking why the government in France is hindering the use of glyphosate and what alternative measures has it put in place to support CA technology. Maybe if also Gerhard or anyone else want to contribute to it, but I think it's to the group that work with glyphosate solutions, please.
We can say politicians, but politicians follow public opinion. And public opinion is now in developed countries made by citizens in cities, and they have completely lost their roots to real life on the ground. They imagine that nature is able to produce alone. And they've made nature a god, a goddess, and everything must be natural. And that's why they prefer us to use tillage, because they think tillage is natural, and not chemical, because they are artificial synthesis. And that's a purely ideological question. In addition, we can say that the ecological movement has become completely ideologic now, and because they see they can have power and money from that, it's another business model, which is new and coming, and it's global. And we are all under influence of that. That's why it's very important that farmers can be on the table of discussion and decide themselves about what is the good agriculture, because we are the only ones to know what it is and the constraints. But now everybody is telling us what we have to do. It's a question of power, of influence, politics.
Alternatives, so you want to add something?
Yes, thank you. I will answer the question as a scientist because I think we can have different opinion on your own. But here at INRAE and also with APAD, we are working on different projects to assess different alternatives to glyphosate. Not because we want to assess to ban glyphosate, but as an agronomist to answer the question how to do it. If politicians decide to ban the use of glyphosate, I think it's our job to answer this question and also to look beyond this ban of glyphosate to be sure to continue to have conservation agriculture in France in the future. So we are experimenting different things, mainly at the cropping system level, because we know that we cannot replace the glyphosate or substitute the glyphosate by something which is as efficient as the glyphosate. Rate the fertilization, and that's why this is a big challenge to think about the ban of glyphosate, because we need to do what the farmer did when they built a CA system at the beginning. Many people said that it was impossible to build a CA system, but they succeed and they built crop rotation and farming practices, and this is what we are doing, and we are doing it with the farmer. We are discussing with the farmer. People have expertise, not only scientists but also the farmers, and particularly in CA systems.
Mm.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Kodo. There just arrived a question for Anwesha. Mr. Halish is asking how the farmers receive the proposition to stop burning residues.
Like the farmers are burning residue mainly because of the harvesters that is being used in the field. So, and according to them, burning is an easy option and economic to them. So when we approached them for how not to do that, so they were asking for some mechanisms that will help to gather the straw at a place or will distribute in the farm evenly for doing the conservation agriculture. So there are mechanisms or machines available for that, but somehow they were not available to those farmers, and that's why that's the problem.
Okay, thank you, Anwesha. There is no question specifically for all of you, but I want to do one question for those who have trios and do field work. My question is, most of the works that we saw here are with measurements until 3 years of trios. But we know that the establishment and we have some balance in the system after 5 and some places even 7 years. And what you think about it, how you are dealing with this balance from the system. It's all for all you that are working with trio. If one to begin, please. Dr. Pedersen, you would like to say something?
Yeah, yes, please. No, well, I think what we made for our new trial here in Denmark that we established 3 years ago, that we did establish on already a CA farm. It was already for a no-till for 4 or 5 years. And I think that was a very well establishment because we ended up sort of having similar yields between treatments. Whereas what we saw beforehand is that most trials were made on fields that had been plowed or plots that had been plowed, and then it took 2 or 3 years, and then often the finance ran out before. So I think that that's just a suggestion that to start your trials already on fields that has been in CA for a while.
Thank you, Mr. Pedersen. Gerhard?
I think the people who have the long-term experience are farmers. Even in France, we've got so many farms with more than 20 years. And some of them has 40 years no-till, like Sarah Singler's farm, for example, which started early 80s, and with success. And the story, especially about weeding, it's a long-term story. We have now, for example, the farmers in organic, for them, weeding is a nightmare. Every time they go to even reduced tillage, even in conventional, is producing more seeds, and also cutting the roots of the rhizomes of perennials. So it's a nightmare. In fact, the only way we have found is either herbicides, and now we have the state of most crops is in because of a long history of herbicides, or organic farmers, what they do, they continuously use inversion tillage, which is the only way for them to get rid of it. So now it's time that we can use the experience of farmers and try to build on that and try, that's what APAD is doing also with the collaboration of INRA, and Stefan is there inside. But we must agree about the objective, which is how to reduce. This is something we can, but do without tools is something which will never happen. Because nature is made like that. We know, you know, we can discuss. In addition, we have no more time. The ban of glyphosate is for 22. Now we can start long-term studies and everything. Next year, or perhaps the next World Congress, we'll see no more European to talk about that, because even the scientific research will be game over. So that's why we need time and be quiet and be able to secure. Because now, for the moment, for farmers, for our communities, the key is how to survive. Because when a farm is bankrupt because not able to produce the yield which is necessary, we'll be out. And that's what happens. And will happen if we don't find the political solution first. That's why we must agree and try to get committed on that.
Great, thank you, Gerhard. Anyone else would like to contribute? No? Dr. Johan just joined us. Hello, we have a question for you.
Sorry for the delay. I've only been able to attend now. There was a problem with the connection, and I also want to apologize for calling you Mr. In my presentation. I wasn't aware that it's going to be a madam chairing us.
No problem, Dr. Johan. You just arrived at time. We have one question for you. It's from, just a minute here, from Willy Mulimbi. He asked, between CA and conventional, what practice requires more nitrogen in wheat production?
Between conventional and no-till and CA?
And yes, conventional and conservation agriculture, or no-tillage. No?
Yeah, is the question less or more nitrogen? I'm not 100% sure about the question.
What practice requires more nitrogen?
Sorry, what? Excuse me?
What practices, conventional or CA, requires more nitrogen?
Yeah, okay. So, we find that with conservation agriculture, we can reduce nitrogen applications. Our trial has shown that, and when we look at it, that one of the slides that I've shown where I've mentioned the amount of nitrogen applied for a certain level of production, we are way beyond or below what is really recommended at this stage. So yeah, definitely in the Southern Cape and the Western Cape of South Africa, there will be, I believe there will be reductions. I don't want to jump the gun, but yeah, definitely there will be lower nitrogen requirements for wheat.
Okay, thank you. And just adding, that's a curiosity for me. Have you in mind some trials or trying with farmers the inoculation of bacteria for nitrogen fixation, or the use of cover crops to enhance this kind, to get out a little also from the mineral fertilization? Have you something in mind?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of research going on in the Western Cape, and we are working on, even within this system trial that we have not free-living nitrogen bacteria, but we've got legumes in the systems. So with the legumes in the systems, yeah, it reduces our requirements. There's quite a lot of research, even with cover crops containing legumes. We are working on that at this stage. So there's quite a lot of work on nitrogen and legume-related. Not so much in legume-related. It started off the past 2-3 years, but it's gaining momentum now.
Great, thank you, Dr. Johan. So let's just check again if there is any question. Just say refresh the page. No, we have no question more. We have already 1 minute. I don't know if anyone wants to say something yet, or I will thank you all for your presentation, for being here with us. Mr. Pedersen, please. You want to say something? You are muted.
Yes. So my question is mainly for a very interesting French research on not using glyphosate. So you introduced white clover, and we will do the same thing in our trials. But does this white clover, does it help, or would it make things even worse? Because white clover was the things that you had main problems with, I understood. So would it be easy without the white clover too?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your addition, Mr. Pedersen. So I think we have all the questions answered. So I will thank all the presenters and also the organization for this moment. And I think it's for now. And see then all the participants in the afternoon, the continuum of our program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Person.
Thank you.
Thank you.